Wonderful. Welcome, everybody, to another Stigma-Free Society Wellness Chats with Nisha. We're super excited to have you with us today. I have an amazing guest talking about a very important topic this morning, and I will be introducing her shortly. I just want to tell you a little bit about the Stigma-Free Society and Wellness Chats with Nisha. So why we started this, it's to help people during this time, as many people are experiencing some really deep things. And we feel that, COVID has really impacted our lives. And while some people are staying home and staying in, some people are, out, and some people are experiencing difficulties. And if you really feel like you're at risk of or in crisis regarding your mental health, we just want you to know to stop watching and please call 911 so that our amazing first responders can do their jobs. Thank you. So a little bit about myself. I'm a registered clinical counselor. I used to be a teacher. I've worked with children at the Ministry of Children and Family Development in intake. And I currently am a documentary maker and a commercial director. And I'm your host every Thursday at 11 for Wellness Chats with Nisha. And it's all about creating community and connecting and helping people talk about the things that are helping us just live in mental wellness. So I would love to introduce Daria Patterson. Hi, Daria.
Hi, Nisha. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Oh, it is our pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for being with us. We greatly appreciate it. And so Daria Patterson is from Youthspace, Need to Suicide Prevention, Education, and Support. And she's our special guest for this week's live event. So I'm going to read a bit about Daria and tell you a bit about her background. So Daria Patterson, she works with Need to Suicide Prevention, Education, and Support as a volunteer coordinator, crisis line facilitator for the Youthspace.ca program. Youthspace.ca program, it's a digital crisis line that delivers emotional support exclusively over instant messaging and text messaging to youth across Canada under the age of 30. So prior to being hired into this role nearly 2 years ago, Daria volunteered with Youthspace as a crisis chat volunteer approximately 2 years. And decreasing the stigma around mental illness and suicide ideation is something that she has always had a passion for. However, she began her advocacy work while studying psychology and English in university. So in her current role, she's had the opportunity to help prepare new volunteers to do crisis line work by training them in reflective listening, crisis theory, and trauma-informed approaches to suicide prevention. In addition to that, she guides volunteers through any challenging situations that may arise while they're supporting young people during their darkest times. So Daria, this is amazing work you're doing.
Thank you. It definitely takes a special sort of person to do this work, which is what I tell all of our volunteers. And I'm just happy that there are people there to listen when youth need it.
Yes, I think that's probably helped so many people, as you had mentioned, in their darkest times.
Mm-hmm.
And you're being there for them and training people to be there for them is saving lives.
Yeah, it honestly is one of the hardest yet most rewarding things I've had the pleasure of doing in my life. I think there's something so powerful in being able to sit there with someone in their darkest moments and just hear their feelings and validate them.
It's everything.
Yeah.
It's everything. I think that our society today, maybe we start to feel isolated, but really people just want to be seen and people just want to be heard.
Yeah, they want to have their feelings acknowledged. And I'm just so happy that Youthspace can be a place where people can come to have that happen.
Maybe you could tell us a bit about youthspace.ca and Need to, and maybe some resources they provide.
Yeah, of course. So, Need To is a nonprofit organization that works every single day to prevent deaths by suicide and reduce the stigma around mental health through our community programs and our online presence.
Amazing.
So, at Need To, we have 4 main programs, which are Youthspace, the C program, Mindfulness for Middle Schools, and the Suicide Loss Support Group. As you mentioned, I specifically work with the Youthspace program, which is the digital crisis line. And this service is available across Canada to any youth under the age of 30 experiencing any sort of crisis. So volunteers are the ones who take those chats, and I get to help them through that journey. So every night between 6 to midnight, our compassionate volunteers support young people through struggles with suicidal thoughts, self-injury, depression, as well as concerns about relationships and school, just to name a few. So, yeah.
So there's a lot of things weighing on our youth's minds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, their youth come in to talk about a broad range of topics. So suicide and depression are the main ones that youth touch upon. But sometimes people just want to come in to talk about anxiety they have about a test coming up, or how they're struggling to have a hard conversation with their parents or partner.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. And to everyone watching, like, if you know any youth, which I'm sure everyone knows someone, right, who's a youth, and I think that there are things that are impacting all of them. I was talking to someone yesterday about trauma, and I was saying, everyone's experienced trauma.
Yeah.
And it just depends on what you define as what was something that was traumatic in your life. And it could, and we all have different levels, but it still impacts us personally in a huge way.
Yeah.
So with like what you offer, if a youth has something on their mind, and if as an adult or another youth, if you see someone struggling and you see that there's something they're struggling with or thinking about or need to talk about, this is a great resource. Mm-hmm. This is an amazing resource for someone to like reach out and talk to someone who is non-judgmental and supportive.
Yeah, it's so nice to be able to have an outside perspective on your life too. Like our volunteers are just here to listen. They're not here to pass judgment on you, the people in your life. They're just here to support you through whatever you need.
That's phenomenal. And I think sometimes we might underestimate the power of just listening.
Yeah, there is so much power in just being heard. I think that people sometimes are too quick to jump in with advice or problem solving, which is a great thing. Like everyone needs a friend who can give them a good advice. But I think there's so much power in just being able to let someone vent their feelings.
Yes, because I think the whole idea is when the youth come to you and are able to vent, then they can start to work through what's going on within themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? In a safe space, and then really the answers are within us.
Mm-hmm.
We need someone to be able to be like a sounding board and hear what we're saying. Maybe you could talk to us a bit about your background and how did you get involved in all of this? Like, what was your journey and your path to lead you here?
Yeah, of course. So my background, I actually worked in a law firm for 4 years of my life.
Wow.
And I really enjoyed the work. Like, it was a very interesting experience. I learned so much and grew as a person, but there was something missing. There wasn't that passion behind it. And I'd always known that I had a passion for mental health because of my own personal struggles and watching loved ones struggle. And I wanted to be someone who could help people through that. And by diving more into my passions and trying to learn more about myself, I realized that I had a strong pull and desire to help people through things. And that led me to Youthspace. And volunteering at Youthspace was one of the best experiences of my life. I always say that Youthspace was my happy place, and it still is to this day. And that led me to want to do this work for the rest of my life in some capacity.
Oh, I love that passion. That's just amazing and so fantastic to be able to recognize, right? Like that we often can get into careers that are good careers, like working in a law firm. That's amazing, great
Yeah.
work. But I think so important to like look into ourselves and tap into what makes me happy. What do
Mm-hmm.
I want to wake up and spring out of bed and work on every day?
Yeah. Because I always say that if you love your job, you're never spending a day at work. Like, I love everything about my job. There's never been a day where I wake up and I'm like, oh, I don't want to go. Even
Oh,
if I'm tired, I want to be there because I know I'm doing good and it just fills my batteries.
and so, what is it about like youth space specifically that drew you to this program? Like, what about this program do you think is so amazing, and what lights you up about it?
Yeah, so Youthspace is just a phenomenal place to work. Like, I was really drawn to it specifically because it was accessible for all youth
Yeah,
since it's texting and youth don't have to call in. And that was a huge thing that I myself struggled with as a youth. I hated calling people. So I thought that this service provided something so unique and I knew I had to be a part of it. But what made me stay was just the environment there. All like at Youthspace, we have such a unique community of volunteers that truly just want to be there and want to support others. It's so nice to be able to work with like-minded people who all just want to give back.
it's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of providing a platform where youth can text in.
Mm-hmm.
This is, I want to say revolutionary, but it is. It's just such a great idea because I think that's really a lot of trend of how people are communicating.
Yeah, and Youthspace actually was one of the first texting crisis lines to be available to youth in Canada. So,
Because I do find that even for myself, I'm less likely to pick up the phone. I'm way more likely to text someone. So when you have that ability or that openness to just text when you're not feeling up to it, then you've just opened it up to so many more youth to feel comfortable to, engage and just say, hey, I'm just not feeling good today, or I just need to chat, or something's bothering me. And then the volunteer will go back and forth and it will be like a chat
yeah.
of support.
Yeah, it'll be like a regular texting conversation. The volunteers will text back through a computer, but it will come across as a text message to the youth. And it'll just be a conversation between the two where the volunteer puts so much effort in to make sure the visitor feels heard and supported.
And so maybe tell us a bit about like the types of things that you're seeing come in, like
Mm-hmm.
the challenges that youth are facing today.
Mm-hmm.
Talk a bit about that and like why you think these things are at the forefront or things that people should be looking out for.
I think one of the main concerns that youth are facing right now, of course, is the isolation due to COVID.
Yeah.
Because youth are at home, separated from school and their friends. And I think there's a huge conversation right now about if kids should go back to school so that they can get that education piece. But when I think about school, it's so much more than just the learning. It's the social interactions, the being connected to your community and your friends.
Yeah.
And they're missing out on that piece extremely right now. So kids are feeling really alone. And some of them are even stuck in situations where they don't feel supported by their families or loved ones. So a lot of kids come in just needing someone to hear them and make them feel valid since they don't have that same support anymore. Outside of the COVID times, I would say that most of the youth come in, chat about depression and anxiety. Like that is the highest amount of our numbers. And they just are struggling with these thoughts and don't know how to share them with the people in their lives. So we're like a stepping stone for them. They share with us, and then they get more confident to talk to these people in their lives about these emotions.
Oh, that is so key.
Yeah.
I think it just took me till my 40s to start talking about my anxiety and depression.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if as a youth, I had felt that support, that it's okay to talk about it. It's good to talk about it. Let's share what's going on. Then maybe I wouldn't have felt so alone. So I love that you're putting that out there so that people don't feel alone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a part of the work that we do is to try and break the stigma around talking about mental health. Like I strongly believe that people should be able to talk about their mental health the same way they talk about their physical health, because they're both just as important.
I I fully agree. I was thinking to someone, if you can put money into a trainer or you can put money into the gym, why wouldn't we put money or effort or thought into our mental wellness, into our mental health?
Yeah.
It is the most important thing. And yes, physical as well, but so important. And so maybe you could tell us about your mental health advocacy. Like, what are your goals about this for the future? Career
Yeah.
goals even.
Yeah, of course. So I have always been a huge advocate for mental health and decreasing the stigma around suicide, like you mentioned earlier. And I personally love going out into the community and just having open conversations with different people around suicide prevention and mental health, because decreasing the stigma must start with open and honest dialogue between people. And I love being a person who can facilitate those conversations and make people feel okay talking about those things. In the future, I'd love to be even more actively engaged in community workshops than I am, so I could give people with lived experience with mental illness the opportunity to openly share their stories without any stigma or judgment.
Yeah, and that is so valued here at Stigma-Free Society as
Yeah,
well. All
of
about
course.
being able to share your stories, and we just love that it's a similar outlook and a similar path.
Yeah.
And so the work that you're doing, it must also be emotionally draining because
Mhm.
um, I just know working in heavy topics and heavy areas, although like you do feel full because you've helped in such strong ways, but I think there's also like heavy things that are probably on your mind, or how do you ensure that you take care of yourself while helping others in crisis?
Mhm. Yeah. So I would say that even though youth space is the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life, there were, of course, difficult situations,
Yeah.
because you're sitting with people in their darkest moments. You're hearing the worst of the worst. So it is very challenging to hear that. And one of the biggest things is not knowing what happens to people after the chat ends. And that's something that I really struggled with as a volunteer and to this day as a staff member. So I really believe in the importance of self-care, because without self-care, I don't know if I'd be able to help people through their struggles. I always joke about this when I train new volunteers, that they're going to get tired of hearing me preach about self-care because I talk about it so much. And it's probably true. They probably do get tired of it. But it's so important, because as helpers, you need to recharge your own batteries before you can help others.
Yeah.
So I'm constantly checking in with myself, like, how am I feeling emotionally? Is something sitting with me? Do I need to debrief more with a counselor or a colleague? And then I'm just taking time to take care of my own needs, whether that be go for a walk or cuddle with my cat. Like, you need to take care of yourself if you're going to be part of this field.
It is extremely important. I think for myself, I've burnt out in this field. I'd say a couple of times, maybe a few times even.
Yeah.
Right? It's not easy. And I think that if you know someone who's working in like a mental health field, mental wellness, just know to remind people, right? Like you said, like, what are you doing to take care of yourself? What are you doing to feel better? because otherwise it's a slippery slope, right? And how can we help others if we're not feeling good ourselves? So like, I'm really happy to hear that you encourage that in your volunteers in such a big way.
Yeah, it's such a huge thing because our volunteers are the people on the front line taking these conversations. So we as staff need to make sure that they're taking time for themselves and that we're offering a safe space for them to debrief when they need it.
And so talking about the volunteers, why don't you tell us a bit about like recruiting for the digital crisis line? So, because I'm sure there are people who would love to volunteer with this crisis line, right? And do work with you. Maybe you could tell us about like how they can do it, what they need to qualify or to apply, where they go.
Yeah. So at the moment, we are actually recruiting a new group of volunteers for our September training. And we recruit 3 times a year in September, May, or February and May. And volunteers just have to be over the age of 17 to volunteer. They don't need any prior experience since we supply them with a 40-hour training program. It's quite in
Amazing.
depth. They get trained in like crisis theory, reflective listening. They learn about other programs and just learn how to support people. So if people are interested in getting involved, they can find information on our website, which is www.youthspace.ca, and just send me a message and we can easily get them set up with the application and an interview.
It's fantastic because I feel that if we are giving back to society, that helps us feel good as humans. It helps us feel better that we have purpose, that we're doing something good, and I highly recommend people check out Youthspace.ca, take a look at the volunteer program, suggest it perhaps to someone who maybe is looking for an experience. Like 40 hours of training, it's amazing. Because it's important to be trained well in this field.
Oh, of course. Yeah, the training is such a crucial part, and they get certified in ASSIST, which is Applied Suicide Intervention Skills Training. And that training, it teaches you how to support someone who is dealing with suicidal thoughts. And I've used that in my work and my everyday life. So the training is applicable in multiple fields.
And so, Daria, when we talk about, mental health struggles, when we ourselves, like you were saying that earlier, that you yourself have faced and experienced certain things, maybe you can share a bit about like what you have faced and how you kind of navigated those waters.
Yeah, of course. So in my early teen years, I really struggled with depression and self-harm and suicidal ideation myself. It was a really rough few years where I didn't think there was any light at the end of the tunnel. I was one of those youth who thought there was no other option except suicide at that point. I was very fortunate that I found services similar to Youthspace and had very supportive family members like my mother, my brother, and I got set up with a phenomenal counselor. So I know that I was very privileged to have that support. And they helped guide me and show me that I was capable and resourceful. So I was able to see that light at the end of the tunnel at the end of the day. Took a lot of practice, a lot of therapy, a lot of support to get me there, but if I put in the effort, I knew I could get to a healthy place again.
I think that's the key, what you're saying as well right here, that I think a lot of us go through these emotions and go into dark places, especially as teenagers. If I look at my teenage years, yes, those things that you just said, yes, I felt all of that. And I was a cutter, and feeling like there's no way out, or controlling my eating, or like all these things because you're feeling like out of control with the outside world. And so then when the dark thoughts come, it's important to know that if you have the right support, if you have someone to talk to or text, that you can make it through. There is light that be drawn towards. It just
And
takes work.
yeah, I think we as a community need to normalize people reaching out for support and make better access because it's part of the human experience to go through struggles. And as a community, we need to foster a safe environment for youth and adults, everyone, to reach out and get access to those supports.
And because you had support, you felt like you could, continue on your journey, that you could find other resources. And I think it's extremely powerful. It's extremely powerful that you can look back and say, I appreciate what I had to help me get through, and also your inner strength to just keep trying.
Yeah, I know that I was very fortunate to have so much support in my life. And that really drove me to want to be that person for other people who didn't have the same supports that I had.
Yeah. And when you talk about youth, children, wanting to be in school right now, wanting not necessarily just for the learning, right? But also, like you're saying, it's for the social aspect. It's for seeing their peers around them, for being in touch with other children. And so I think even throughout COVID, maybe youth or children have had the opportunity to maybe sometimes have a distancing play date, or go for a bike ride, or go for a walk. But then there's also children who may be even more isolated, who didn't have that social circle to begin with, and maybe really depended on that, just seeing kids when they're at school. But if they're not at school, maybe they're not seeing people within their circle. Maybe they're not seeing other youth. Maybe they're feeling extremely isolated. And that is very lonely. That's a lonely place.
Yeah, that's an extremely lonely place to be in. And it's such a valid thing for youth to be experiencing right now. Yeah.
And so if anyone can think of a youth in this type of, an experience right now, think about them. Think about how you can support them. Think about how you can spend time with them in a safe way, or introduce them to this line even of how they can be creating and texting, so that they feel through maybe Youthspace.ca that they have support, that they have someone to talk to. What advice do you have for young people going through a difficult time, especially during COVID?
I think I would encourage youth to reach out for support and try to make their mental health a priority. They deserve that support and deserve to be heard. So if someone is finding themselves feeling down during social isolation and COVID, it can be really easy to slip into the mindset that they're alone. But I just want to remind people that isn't always the case. There are so many wonderful services that are there to support you and be there for you, even during these uncertain times. So even though we're isolating, it doesn't mean that we have to be alone. So I strongly encourage people to reach out if they are able to.
Thank you, Daria. So what types of signs, should people be looking out for? What types of signs start to show people that, okay, or even as a youth to self-reflect, okay, what's changed or different? What are the signs that show me, okay, I need some support right now. I need some help, or somebody I know needs help.
Yeah, I think if you're looking for signs of suicidal ideation in youth, there are tons of different factors that could come to mind. There are ones like isolating from your friends and family, just seeming really down and not themselves, giving up on activities that they used to love. There are also behaviors like hiding things from people and not being as open as they were before. And yeah, there's so many different signs. And if you think someone is struggling, please do reach out to them. Because one thing that really stops people from asking for help is the feeling of them being a burden for asking for it. So I strongly encourage you to be the one to reach out first.
Oh yeah, that is great advice, great suggestions, things for people to think about, things for people to look out for, because we have to support each other as a community. We have to
Yeah.
look out for each other.
Mhm.
And, it can be an interesting time when you're a youth. It can be confusing and overwhelming, and the
Mhm.
world has changed so drastically. So,
Yeah.
it's so important. And so I think the work you're doing is amazing.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for being so phenomenal in all you're doing, and the way that you're supporting people. And great for you, like training volunteers, making things happen, and that we can feel some comfort knowing that there's somewhere to go that's actually servicing youth in the way that they communicate.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah.
So, any last thoughts or words before we close for today?
Just if you or a loved one is struggling, please do feel free to reach out to Youthspace between 6 p.m. to midnight every night of the year, and someone will be there.
Amazing. Thank you from Stigma-Free Society. Thank you, Youthspace.ca. Please check them out. Please, if you need someone and know someone in need, needing support, this is a great opportunity. And just want to say the future, look at how, where, and what you've done. This is phenomenal. So keep up the great work, and we look forward to seeing more work from you in the future.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Daria.
Thanks for
Have
having me.
day. Thank you, everyone. And we'll see you next week with Wellness Chats with Nisha for the Stigma Free Society, Thursdays at 11. Okay, bye. Take care. Much love to you.